What's good, everyone? We got a little bit longer episode on malicious compliance today. I hope you enjoy. Here we go. Okay, chef, let's do it your way. While I was studying, I started working for a successful bar, which also served gourmet wood fire pizza. I was employed as a kitchen hand, and my main duties were helping on the pizza section during service, helping with food prep, dishwashing, and cleaning. After 6 months, I had slowly taken more and more initiative in the kitchen until I was eventually promoted to cook, which meant I learned how to cook all the dishes in the kitchen, even the fancy stuff, and usually ran the kitchen on a late night service with the help of a more junior kitchen hand. Around 1 year in, my boss, the head chef, decided we needed a better pizza dough recipe. He bought a dough recipe from a popular pizza place in my city, and it tasted great, but the problem was that it didn't last long in the fridge, which meant lots of wastage. So head chef decided to tweak the recipe to make it last longer. He changed the type of yeast and changed it to a cool proof instead of a warm proof, along with many other things. Now, to give some context, by this point I had become one of the better pizza guys on my team, and quite a few of my colleagues had commented that the dough I made always came out the best, which I attribute to quite a few modifications I had made to the recipe over 12 months of working at it. I had changed almost every part of the recipe, except for the actual basic ingredients used. I made the recipe a bit more adaptable too. If we suddenly needed an extra batch ready to use in 4 hours, I would make it completely differently than a batch that would sit in a cool room all week. I'm definitely no master baker, and I don't pretend to understand the micro-scale workings of the whole process, but trial and error and lots of repetition taught me a thing or two at least. Head chef never said a word about me quietly tweaking the recipe, because the feedback from the customers was almost always good and he was getting all the credit. Head chef initially came across as a nice guy, pretty chilled out, but he was a terrible boss and very disorganized. This led to us never having the necessary stock to prep all the menu items and always having poor staffing ratios and skill mix. These faults alone would be forgivable. After all, he was a nice guy under a lot of stress, but he was consistently jerking staff members around. He promised full-time contracts that were never signed, pay raises that never hit the bank, staff parties that never happened, and constantly rostering us to work on days that we had specifically asked to have off. One chef was employed on a sponsored visa, meaning that if he lost his job, he would likely have to leave the country, and this poor chef got worked into the ground, basically abused, because the boss knew he couldn't do anything about it. Safe to say, morale got pretty low in the kitchen, and lots of the staff were looking for jobs elsewhere. It gets to Christmas, and it's the end of the year party time for a lot of businesses, which means our venue was booked out every day and night for a month. We had all been working crazy hours doing prep work, and while I was at home, finally chilling out after a double shift, my phone starts blowing up. Head chef is blasting us all on our work group chat because one of the batches of dough had turned out crappy. Not my batch, of course, and he was demanding that we all had to follow the recipe to the letter. I spoke to head chef the next day to remind him that we didn't have the right kind of yeast for that recipe, and to ask if we were having some delivered. Head chef told me I was to use the yeast we had, and that it would be fine. I tried to point out that the original recipe was written for a different type of yeast and proofing method, but he shut me down pretty hard. I'm the head chef here, and you're a dishwasher. I said it'll be fine. Okay, chef, let's do it your way. The next day, I prepped 20 batches of dough, which for our small kitchen was a massive amount. On a typical weekend, I would have gone through 1, maybe 2 batches, but for the next week, all the customers had paid in advance and they wanted huge amounts of food for their year-end parties, and why not when it's company coin? As explicitly instructed, I made all 20 batches exactly as stated in the original recipe, just like I'd been told. I used precisely 0 of my hard-learned tips and tricks. The first big night comes around, and I already know it's going to be a disaster. The dough is terrible, like really, really bad. I seriously felt ashamed sending them out, but there was nothing to be done at that point. Then the feedback started coming in. It was not great, let me assure you. The next day, after presumably getting chewed out by one of the event organizers from the night before, head chef comes into the kitchen and tells us to throw away the entire week's worth of dough, and that we would all be offered overtime for as many additional hours we had to stay back to remake it all. We were almost exclusively on fixed rates until that point. On top of that, in a sublime piece of sweet satisfaction, I overhear head chef quietly tells the sous chef to get them to make it the other way before walking out of the kitchen. Sous chef is the aforementioned visa holder, He turns to me with a knowing grin and nothing more is said. I continued working in the kitchen until I completed my studies, mainly because the late night shifts rarely interfered with my curriculum, but almost all the other staff moved on from that place. I'll never know just how much it cost the bar to replace all that dough, or how much revenue they lost reimbursing the customer, or how head chef explained it to all his corporate bosses. Probably blamed us, but I like to think he got exactly what he asked for. Edit, sous chef now runs the kitchen and head chef has moved to another venue. Why do some chefs have that superiority like ego complex? Like they're all delusional artists, I swear. Creative problem solving with kilts. Several years ago at my first IT job, I worked in a pretty great office. Well, great except for one coworker. Everyone in this office had the same job. We worked desk-side IT support. This required a lot of walking, crawling under desks, and carrying equipment. Each of my coworkers had an assigned area that they were responsible for and pulled their weight, all except for Blondie. One day at work, we had a large project. My manager required everyone to pitch in to get this done by the deadline. Everyone except Blondie. Every time there was work to do, she would say she couldn't because of her heels or skirt. Someone else would have to do her share. Normally, I don't care what she or anyone else does or does not do. I do my work, she does hers. On this day, I was tasked to do the work she was assigned. I wasn't happy. The next day, another coworker of mine, also female, was assigned the work Blondie could not do because of her wardrobe choices. That day at lunch, we come up with a plan. We will wear kilts the next day, and the other two women will wear skirts and heels to work. The next day at work, we show up to our morning huddle to get our assignments for the day. My boss is visibly uncomfortable. Half of his team is in skirts or kilts. I get my assignments for the day and immediately tell my boss I can't, due to me wearing a kilt. The rest follow my lead. I feel bad for my remaining coworkers having to pull my weight, but they think what we are doing is funny. This day was amazingly unproductive. No one can say anything about it because they have let Blondie do this for literally years. Day 2, my boss is even more frustrated and pulls me aside. I hand him a well-written dress code policy that another office uses that has already been approved by legal. He spends the day fast-tracking the approval of this policy. At the end of another horribly unproductive day, we have a surprise team meeting. There is now a dress code that requires long pants and closed-toe shoes for safety reasons. Blondie's look of rage directed at me made no mistake that she knew I was responsible for this. I do not care who you are, what you look like, or what gender you are. I care about the quality and quantity of your work. If you're hiding from pulling your weight intentionally, I will put a stop to it. I can just imagine them all showing up in kilts and skirts and the manager going, what? Looks like Blondie over there is gonna have to start doing some work. Wear your freaking heels and skirt in here, lady. And this is why I love my boss. This just happened last night. I work at a small mom and pop pizza place in a small town. We're the only not gas station pizza place in town. Friday nights get busy, so my boss is cooking and I'm waitressing. The cook cooks and the waitress does everything else. It would be nice to have two of us, but we manage, and the people of our town expect it and respect it after all these years. It's busy. I've got several tables and the phone has been ringing off the hook with to-go orders. I've got piles of dishes. Someone is constantly at the register and food is constantly ready to go out. My customers are being great. Everyone is smiling and laughing and not worried that things are taking a bit longer than normal on a Tuesday night. I was busy but not stressed yet. Then he calls. Some guy from out of town. There was a high school game, so we had a few out-of-towners that night. He orders a large thin crust. Our thin crust is very thin. About as thin as a cracker crust, but it's not crispy like that. Pizza with pepperoni. Easy peasy. He wants it well done. Can do. He wants us to put it in the oven for an extra 5 minutes. I say, okay, with zero intention of doing that. We have a brick oven. Our thins go in the oven for 3 to 4 minutes. 4.5 for well done. That's total. This guy wants 5 extra minutes on top of that. He wants a 16-inch charcoal hockey puck. I assume he thinks he knows what he's talking about and just put on the ticket well done. We do our thing. His pizza looks beautiful. He comes to pick it up and before paying he opens the box to inspect his pizza. This is normal and I'm not worried. I asked for my pizza well done. This is how we make our pizzas well done. Any more than this and your pizza will burn. I'm not paying for this. I'm not eating this. I want a new one, and I want it how I ordered. Put it in for 5 more minutes. At this point, my boss taps me on the shoulder and tells me to take over the cooking while he handles the customer. Our kitchen abuts the register counter. I'm literally making pizza 5 feet away from the interaction, so I get to hear the whole thing. My boss tries to tell the guy how long we usually cook the pizzas, what's going to happen to his pizza, etc., etc. Customer is having none of it. He wants his pizza cooked the normal time plus an additional 5 minutes. After a few minutes, I can tell my boss has had enough of this guy. Boss, sure you don't just want this pizza? Meaning the one we had already made. Guy says no, so my boss brings it out to one of the regulars and let him have it. He comes back to the guy and informs him if he wants his cooked for 9 minutes, he needs to pay first. Guy seems satisfied and pays. I hop back to waitressing and boss takes over cooking and making this guy his pizza. It goes in the oven looking beautiful. Boss sets the timer for 9 minutes and makes sure to show the guy the timer. He just smiles and chuckles a little. I'm bussing tables and checking people out and answering the phone while we wait on this guy's pizza. The timer goes off for his pizza. The guy comes closer to the counter. It's my job to cut the pizza as soon as boss man puts it in the box. He lifts this solid black, hard-ass charcoal hockey puck out of the oven and sets it in the box. You can barely tell it's a pizza anymore. I attempt to cut it, but it is so overcooked, it more or less just cracks and crumbles. My back is to him, so I can't see his face, but I can imagine. I close the box, turn, and hand it to him with a smile on my face. Enjoy your pizza, sir. Guy stutters a bit. I can't eat that. Boss, we made your pizza to order. If you want a new pizza, you'll need to order a new one and pay for that. The guy has this completely broken look on his face. I was actually almost looking forward to a blow up. My boss is a force to be reckoned with if you curse or disrespect us. He left his pizza on the counter and left. This is why I love my boss. Who's making pizzas and not collecting payment first? You always get a payment first. Then if they change their mind, at least they paid for it already. Told to dress better for a job that requires getting dirty. Okay, here's a bit of background. I've worked in construction and service for 15 years. I recently gave up that career for a job in special effects for TVs and movies. Last year I started a production with people I've worked with in the past. I'm a known quantity, and my smartass attitude usually precedes me. This production, which isn't out yet, so the details will be sparse, is mostly set on a train. This set has to wag, shake, and wiggle like a real train would, so we built heavy teeter-totters on wheels. All heavy gauge steel, casters, and bearings. Now, these gimbals, common name for a motion platform, have a tendency to make noise, which, as you would imagine, would affect production. So one of my jobs was to crawl into the set on a concrete floor and grease joints, tighten the bolts, etc. Safety checks were daily. This usually left me somewhat dusty and dirty through the day. Typically, I'd be wearing Carhartt pants and shirt, both black of course. Gotta stay hidden in the dark as much as possible. Most film departments that have to do something physical quite often wear black on black, so anything else is abnormal. This is where we lead into my malicious compliance. One day, I got a small hole in my shirt, just a little smaller than a dime, right on the front. So the first assistant, friend of mine that I've worked with before, says I really need to dress better as there should be an image we should attain. I just look at him unbelievingly for a second, and he re-insists, so I agree. I usually agree to things immediately to keep drama down in the workplace. I immediately know what I'm going to do for the rest of the week. This was on a Tuesday. The next day, I show up in my best dressed clothes, shirt, tie, dress pants, and dress shoes. Completely, 100% wholly overdressed. Nobody dresses for a wedding in any film department unless it's a theme day, like Tropical Shirt Friday. Dressed like this, I cannot do my job, so I just direct coworkers on how to do it. I spent the next 3 days dressing like that until the SPFX coordinator mentioned that maybe I should dress down now, as I had made my point. I also got a lot of compliments from more than a few people, and every couple of Fridays people would come in with suits for formal Fridays. It was nice not getting my hands dirty, but spending close to 50 hours with a tie and dress shoes is something I'd like to avoid for a while. You told me to dress nice, and I'm not going to get my shirt dirty, so I'm just going to stand here. You want me to put a fake name on your order? Alright. So this is about 3 years ago. I was working at Papa John's in Canada and was acting as the assistant manager. When we had customers order within the store, we would just take the customer's name so that we can call out their order once it's ready, and usually this isn't an issue. Well, an older gentleman walks in, 60 to 70 I'd say. He waits in line, approaches the counter and places his order. But when I asked this customer for his name, I realized I had opened Pandora's box. "What do you need my name for?" "It's so that when your order is prepared I can call it out for you, sir." "You don't need my f***ing name," turns to the customers in line and says, "Watch out, the f***ing pizza guy wants your social security number." "Sir, if it is an issue, you can just use a fake name. Just put Bob on it." And so I did. 10 minutes later, his pizza is hot and fresh from the oven. I walk to the counter and yell out to the store, "Pizza for Bob." The guy doesn't budge. I realize now that this man has forgotten that he was ordering under an alias and doesn't know his order is ready. The other customers in the store, however, knew what was happening because they just watched and heard the misery unfold. They turned to Bob. They turned to me. They turned to Bob. And I can see it in their eyes. Even the customers longed for that malicious compliance. I continued to bring the other customers their orders, some who had been there before him. And once Bob had noticed that I was serving food to those who ordered after him, he approached the counter. At this point, the pizza is getting nice and dry under the heat lamp. It's been about 20 minutes since he's ordered. "Is my food going to be ready soon?" "Sir, it's been out of the oven for about 10 minutes now. I've called for the name you gave me several times, but nobody came to the counter." At this point, the guy is aware that he's getting his food late at his own demise. I hand him the pizza and there is no more exchanging of words. He leaves and goes on his way. The customers who witnessed the misery unfold were all snickering as he left. Yeah, this dude just sounds a little paranoid. Maybe next time give him the benefit of the doubt and just walk the pizza out to him. How hard is that? It's still funny though. Also, why is there so many pizza posts in malicious compliance? Like, someone want to inform me why that is? I don't mind it, but I'm just curious. Alright everyone, that's going to do it for this episode. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this. Smash like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all next time. Peace.